Welcome everybody to Daily Census Explained, where we explain the story in more detail, but in a fun way, so you can know the backstory and how the inspiration came for each episode and each chapter. Thank you guys for listening.
Welcome back, everyone, to Daily Census Explained, Chapter 15, The Showdown. And, when you hear showdown, you might think, gunslingers or something, but actually, any conversation with HR is a showdown. And so, especially if HR doesn't like what you're doing. And, because HR departments, really, they're about protecting the organization more so than the individual, to be perfectly honest. Not every HR person or every department, but generally speaking, at least in my experience, is that HR is there to defend the interests of the organization over whatever your personal quibbles
They can help
may
you.
be.
They can help you, but
Yeah.
than that, it's the organization first.
Exactly. I've been a firsthand, we'll say, victim of that with a bad boss who was a friend of the CEO, and no amount of complaint against them would get rid of that guy. And
right.
so eventually he got rid of me. So, but HR was no help at all. So in this case, it's we're continuing with that conversation between May Payne and Marcia Glenton, and they're facing off on all the things that Glenton wants to do. And, as we were saying before, she has a point in often wanting to, not only to sticking very hard to policy, because we had two incidents where people broke policy, and that's why, seemingly, why people died. It contributed to it anyway, even if they don't know that there was someone else at work there. But she really is overstepping into HIPAA territory, and as you said before, doesn't care, but really that can bring down your whole hospital and, get more people to quit if you start just screwing around with HIPAA, FERPA type regulations. So she wants to put cameras, as we were saying, in all these areas that it's not allowed. Now, that would be great if you were able to do that and you were knowing that you would catch perpetrators coming in and out, but it's just not allowable for a lot of other reasons. And so neither of them want to back down. It's like the old saying about the unstoppable object hitting the unmovable object. And so, because neither of them wants to step back from this. And again, having been in some HR situations, not people complaining against me, but me trying to fix something, I have seen this kind of thing happen. So is this one based on an actual experience or a combination of?
No, not really. I just know how HR works.
Yeah.
So I just made sure that it was tied in because the way Marcia was changing all these policies, eventually HR will have to be involved. So, of course, people are going to complain. The nurses are going to complain about her stringent policies and invasion of privacy. So, yeah, HR will have to talk to her eventually. And that's what this is about, basically.
Yeah, I'm glad I've never had to have that happen either, where I was called down to HR or I had to go to HR.
Yeah, and this is, and again, as we were saying, HR is defending the organization, so certainly they don't want to upset the unions. They don't want to upset any local or state government or federal. And so they want to keep their license, keep the hospital open. So, eventually Glenton has to step down, even though she really pushes and says, I disagree with not doing this. Yeah. And I don't care what the laws are.
Yeah, that was her job to, have the interests of the hospital.
Right.
And, there were threats of lawsuits, threats of individual and personal lawsuits against from members of the hospital against the hospital and towards the nurse with her new policies.
Yes.
So she just wanted to make her aware of what was going on, and obviously she didn't care.
Well, I love it that how May Payne just made sure that she understood that I do have power here. Mm-hmm. I can make one phone call and you can go away.
Yeah.
So either you do what you're supposed to do or I'm going to have to make that phone call.
Yeah.
Because she also has a direct line to the board of directors.
Yeah. And she really does have the upper hand in the power here. And even if something happens later and that a perpetrator could have been caught on camera, they still can't blame Payne for following
Yeah,
HIPAA rules.
she's covered.
Yeah.
So this and May Payne definitely tried to be professional, handling in a gentle manner, but Marcia had that attitude.
Oh yeah.
And
Touch-
she made
pissing her
May
off.
Payne take it there.
Yeah.
And she's like, look, I'm trying to be nice to you, but if you want to play this route, you keep going this route, I have to make a phone call to the board of directors.
Yeah.
And if I got to make a call to them, you going and probably somebody else.
Right.
So that's when Marcia just backed down, like, okay, fine. Even though Marcia might be right in the end, it doesn't matter.
Right. Right. It's the law you have to follow.
Mm-hmm.
And it does bring up that this is a much larger conversation, but it's one that we've really had to have in this country in the last few decades, is how much privacy are we willing to sacrifice for security, and where is the line? What are we willing to give up to feel more safe? Whether or not we really are more safe, that's a whole other thing. But to even feel more safe, what are we willing to give up? And it starts getting into Orwellian, cameras in everyone's house kind of thing, monitoring all your activities.
You got a TV with monitor. You got.
Well, I was going to say,
watch both ways.
We do. We have laptops with cameras
Camera
on them, and
they open up anytime.
Right. Exactly. So we already are in that Orwellian age in many ways, but yeah, that's always that push and pull of, hey, if you have it here, you're going to be more safe, but we're also going to see anything you do. You'll have no privacy, in the bathroom, in the locker room, and we'll be able to see it all. And as we were talking about before, unfortunately, there's always someone who will abuse that power and use it, whether it's for their own personal pleasure or to gather information on someone to blackmail them or get rid of them or something. That's always the pushback, is how will that information be used? Who has access to that data?
And then I want to make it realistic as well, because you can't make all these policies without thinking about the HIPAA.
Right.
If I'd have wrote, then they put cameras in the bathroom, they put cameras in the hallway, put cameras in the locker room, they put people like, no, you can't do that. That's not realistic. You can't do that at a hospital.
Yeah.
HIPAA. So I want to remember, when I write this, I have to make sure that I follow certain guidelines that people work in the hospital and know this is realistic.
Yeah.
They'll be like, oh, that's bullshit. You can't do that. And then I'll stop reading it.
Right.
This one, they'll know for a fact, okay, yeah, he's right. You can't do that.
Where can you have cameras? Like, can you have them in patient rooms?
You can have them in the
things?
hallway.
Uh-huh.
You can have them in the hallway, basically in the hallways and entrance area, entrance and exits,
Can you have
and
them
parking lots.
But I imagine you can't have them in patient rooms or operating
No.
rooms or
Well,
things
in
like
training hospitals, you do have cameras,
Oh, okay.
but there are lights to acknowledge when they're on and off.
that. I see.
Because I know
Okay.
I've worked in training hospitals, and there are cameras, not in every room.
What area are you talking about?
In the patient room, in the
we talking about bathrooms and
no, patient
restrooms.
rooms,
You can't
yes.
have that
bathrooms. No.
Right.
because St. Luke's was a training hospital.
Okay.
But the places that we know for a fact that they're in the hallways and everything there.
Yeah.
But how I'm putting the killer to get in, I just showed you how they were getting in.
Right.
You know?
And
And they can't do anything about it. So,
now a question for, it's not really discussed earlier, but kind of in your mind of how this hospital looked. Did it have any cameras previously?
yes. And hallways.
Okay. So just a minimum.
Hallways, parking lot, stuff like that.
Yeah.
What they didn't have it in is in the locker rooms and the bathrooms.
Right.
Which makes sense. But if you think about if you've been in any ICU units, everything in there, most of the nurses and everything, they dress in the locker room right outside the unit.
Yeah.
They go change and go straight into the ICU.
Yes.
They get out, go straight there, and then they got a break room there. So because they got to really be there. They're supposed to be there. Somebody be there 24/7.
Mm-hmm.
So somebody's always there to cover it.
Yeah.
So that's how I put it like that. So that's why ICU is important. I couldn't say they were in a emergency room doing all this killing because too many people that you couldn't get away with it.
Right.
You couldn't get away. It was just illogical. So that made more sense.
And even with some of the technology shortcomings, security shortcomings that they have, it's still, I've been assuming all along in the way I've been talking about it, but it still lends to the thought that this is someone from within and not someone who is just targeting this hospital. It's someone who knows not only how a hospital works, but knows where the cameras are, knows where the weak points in their security system in terms of like the badge readers. And I don't think they've updated them yet. I know that comes at some point. It's discussed that they're updated, but I don't know if I don't think I don't think I've skipped that. But yeah, so it again gives more and more credibility to this being one of our major players again, and not just an outsider.
When May Payne talks to Marcia, she did explain to her that they did upgrade the cameras.
Okay.
But they couldn't. Yeah. But she said, "Yeah, you upgrade, but you didn't put them in the most vulnerable positions, areas." Right. And then so that's when she explains to the HIPAA, "We can't put them in those areas. I explained that to you before."
Yeah.
And she was like, "Well, she was hell bent on putting them there anyway."
Yeah.
And then she's like, "We can't do that." And that's when they had the argument.
Okay.
Like, come on now, we gave you cameras, updated cameras. We got the badge readers updated. You can't do all this,
right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's when both of them had they conflict, their argument about.
Yes. Well, and again, with the badge readers, only if it's someone who is very much not supposed to be in the area. If it's someone who has access anyway, then it's not necessarily going to make much of a difference.
It's really not going to help at all. Yep.
Yeah. Well, I like a line that this episode ends on, and I think it's the final line, is you cannot fight HR. And truer words were never spoken. For better or worse, HR is usually the final word on
Yes,
things.
sir. They're going to win regardless.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why Marcia just let it go.
Yep. Yep. She just finally backed down and said, okay.
Yeah, they represent the
You'll see later.
Hospital.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. Well, again, it's been a couple years since an incident, so I imagine something's coming again soon here. So we'll see you next time. So join us for the next episode.
Yes, sir. And thank you for joining us for this chapter of Daily Census Explained.